Okay, so good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to this 2026 UNESCO WWAP International Online Seminar Series. We are starting our training activities regarding water and gender. That this cycle we have called From Advocacy to Practice, and we will be sharing different methods, tools for advancing gender equality in water resource management. This first webinar will be dedicated to sex disaggregated data and gender responsive indicators, sharing with all of you the World Water Assessment Program Toolkit on water and gender. My name is Laura Imburgia, and I coordinate the water and gender activities at UNESCO World Water Assessment Program, and I also coordinate the activities of capacity development. Today, we will have also my colleague Lawrence Tui, who will introduce him later, our colleague Epifania Amuadare, and then we will have two speakers, one from a recorded video because she will be speaking from the Philippines, and from Italy, Francesca Greco, that we will introduce her later. So the program for today is to have a very brief introduction of our work at UNESCO WWAP. Then we will share the main aspects of the toolkit, the WWAP toolkit, some experiences implementing it and what we have learned by doing so. We will have a space for question and answers that we hope that all of you present here can interact, give comments, and participate, and we will be concluding them. So the World Water Assessment Program is a decentralized program from UNESCO. We are located in Italy, in Perugia, central Italy, and we are part of the UNESCO Water family, together with the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, the UNESCO chairs and water-related centers with the auspice of UNESCO. So you may know our central activity is the production of the World Water Development Report, which is the United Nations flagship report on fresh water that every year is published by UNESCO on behalf of UN Water. And here at WWAP, we coordinate and develop all the editorial process. This year, the theme has been Water for All People, Equal Rights and Opportunities, with a focus on water and gender, and very particular emphasis on women and the differences and the conditions of still gender inequalities that are present in the water domain. At WWAP, as said, we have a quite active component of water and gender equality that we have organized around 4 key areas. One is the development of methodologies and tools for sex disaggregated data collection and analysis, and gender responsive indicators. This is what we will be discussing today. We also implement projects in the field using this methodology, but also all what relates to gender integrated analysis in water. We complement with capacity development activities, trainings, online and in person as well, and an active area of advocacy and communications regarding water and gender. So the WWAP Toolkit has been developed more than 10 years ago, more than that, and we are on the second edition, 2019 edition, and this has become a global standard for gender responsive indicators in water that we have been able to implement in different regions, different parts of the world that we will be sharing today. The toolkit contains 4 booklets or tools that together compile the more than 100 indicators, all the conceptual approach and methodologies, guidelines to implement it, and ready-to-use questions to develop your own study tools for data collection. We will be discussing all this in more detail. The toolkit, since its launch, has received international recognition and support from different instances and institutions, from AMCO, the African Ministers' Council on Water, since the first edition in 2015, up to the resolution of the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program of UNESCO that is backed by member states who participate in it. And for example, UN Water, through the gender contextualization work on SDG 6, has also considered these indicators as model and suggests it in its work. So the tool 1 of this toolkit contains all the indicators organized in 10 priority topics or priority areas of development, from water governance, water sanitation and hygiene services, education, water rights, transboundary waters, climate change, migration, etc. And together, this has been developed, especially the second edition was developed in close alignment with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The second tool contains all the methodology, from the conceptual approaches and the analytical and practical aspects to implement it. It has concepts, for example, very important, the need for combining qualitative and quantitative data collection when doing gender analysis, aspect as well of the different sectors, levels where the indicators can be implemented, and a key aspect of the toolkit that is the look to intra-household activities, dynamics, gender roles, etc. The third tool, the guidelines on specifically how to adapt and apply the toolkit, the indicators in the different regions with different stakeholders, and which aspects are, of course, more useful to do in different contextual situations. Finally, the fourth tool contains, as mentioned before, more than 300 ready-to-use questions that are also organized following this structure of the indicators in different priority topics. And they have been developed to be as flexible as possible for adapting to different conditions, different regions, different research questions. And Lawrence will then talk a bit more in detail about this. So this is an example of what you can find in this tool. So the indicators and the different recommendations for data collection, being secondary data as desk reviews or primary data as, for example, a survey. This is so another example of what you can find. And now I will pass the floor to my colleague, Lawrence, who Lawrence will present himself and continue. Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Laura. And hello, everyone. Good day. So yeah, my name is Lawrence Dai, and I'm consultant on water and gender communications and knowledge at the UNESCO WWAP. So in continuation of the introduction that Laura gave on the toolkit, the overview of the toolkit, I'm now gonna look together with you on some step-by-step guidance for applying the toolkit in the field. So we broke this down in 10 practical steps. Of course, it is true that these steps, they don't always follow the same sequence. So some can happen in a different order, or they can even happen simultaneously, depending on the context and depending on the team. So let's give it a go. Next, please. So first of all, we're going to look at the field study scope. Of course, it's of high importance to determine very clearly what is your field study scope. In other words, what is the aim? What's the aim? What do you want to do in your field work? And of course, this has to align with the objectives of your project. And therefore, we advise to formulate a central problem statement. And then based on this problem statement, we can determine different priority topics of the problem. And I want to illustrate it briefly with an example of a project that we're currently embarking in, which is the Cambodia Mekong Delta Aquifer Project. And the aim of the project is to assess and promote women's inclusion in water governance. So what we did then is to see what are the priority topics in terms of the problem statement. And we worked with the national teams on formulating these priority topics. So you see here the example. In Cambodia, this was, for instance, the cultural social norms, institutional barriers, the limited application of gender-sensitive policies, and limited access to education and resources. So then we go to the next slide. And of course, then we want to know where are we going to conduct the field study, right? What is going to be the field study area where we will conduct it? And this obviously depends on our problem statement, because the field study area has to be representative for the scope of the field study. For instance, to give an idea, we want to collect sex disaggregated data in water-stressed communities. Then our first step will be to map them in the area and to select the areas that suit this prerequisite. Then the next steps are a bit more logistical of nature, but it's still on the previous slide, sorry. So the next steps are, for instance, still on slide 2, sorry. We have to see if the area can be easily reached by the team. Is it in an accessible area? Are there any permits that are required to enter the area or to talk with the communities? For instance, obtaining authorization from the local authorities or from the community leaders. Also, we have to see again if the choice of the location influences the objectives of the field study, and we have to maybe adjust these. And of course, other parameters that we will see later on are also relevant, for instance, the resources. So then we can go to our third step, which is collecting background information. Yeah. This is a critical step also to undertake before we enter the field, because we need to build as a team a solid understanding of the context where our field work will take place. So we can do this by gathering data in line with the priority topics, as we just saw. And ideally, we collect data that is relevant for the local context, as close as possible to the study area that we have picked. So this information, we can gather it from desk review, for instance, online sources, or previous research that has been conducted. We can also look at key informants and other relevant contacts in the field that can give us access to other data. And of course, then we move to data collection in the field for that data that we cannot find already available somewhere. So here's an example for a survey on generals in water management at the household level. We want to gather data on, for instance, water availability in the study area, water quality, perceptions with respect to water quality and quantity, and so on and so on. So then the fourth step would be, and this is often a very limiting factor, and that's yes. This is often a limiting factor because, of course, we have to match the ambition of our field research with the resources we have available, which is financial resources, human capacity and human resources, as well as the time. And here it's really of importance that we do a realistic planning because it's better to have a well-executed study that is less ambitious than an overly ambitious one that we cannot complete, or we have to do it in a, a dubious manner. Then we move to the fifth step, which is determining the scale of your field research and your sample size. So this is again fully in line with the last step. It depends on the resources that are available. But based on that information, we have to determine how many people are we going to select to interview, to obtain disaggregated data on, and how are we going to stratify the sample. So on one hand, the sample size, it depends on your target population and the need of representativeness of this sample population with respect to the population of your survey area, right? Because it has to represent this area. Your sample has to represent very well in terms of gender, stakeholder type, and all these different parameters. It has to represent the area as well as possible. And so the key message here is that your sample, of course, has to be large enough to give a good picture of the population, but it has to remain feasible with respect to the resources you have available. And then we go to the sixth, which is our favorite part of the colleagues of WWAP, because it's on indicators. So after having determined the previous 5 steps, the survey scope, the central problem statement, the field area, and the sample, we can now look into the indicators we want to pick. So here comes into play our toolkit that our colleague Laura presented earlier. The WWAP Toolkit, and the first tool that contains all the indicators, actually are in-house produced indicators. So, of course, these indicators, so they are subdivided in 10 topics. There are 105 of these indicators, and yes, they can be adapted, but we want to highlight that it's important to maintain the underlying methodology so that we can be consistent and preserve comparability with other projects or field works where the indicators have been implemented. So here's on the slide a quick reminder of the 10 priority topics. And then we can move to the 7th slide or the 7th step. So, of course, the indicators that we pick, they depend on the data collection methods that we want to apply in the field and vice versa. And the good news is that the indicators in the toolkit and also the methodology are very flexible, and they actually, sorry, I was timing this. So the toolkit and its methodology is flexible, so it describes different methods that we can use, such as the ones displayed here: the desk study, individual interviews, intra-household interviews, participatory observation, and so on. And actually want to underline here that using mixed methods actually comes in handy because it strengthens your data sets. For instance, quantitative data shows patterns in data, while qualitative data actually explains the quantitative data. Then the 8th step is to build a survey in view of the previous steps. So here we take tool number 4 of our WWAP toolkit, and we choose for each of the indicators that we have selected, we can pick the questions that we want. But it goes without saying that the wording of these questions has to be adapted to local norms, to education levels, languages, and all that. And we also recommend to keep the survey as short as possible to avoid fatigue of the interviewees. And by the way, some of these steps we really recommend that there is some guidance of WWAP on how to best do this in practice. So then we're almost at the end, but the 9th step is then to create a team for the field study. Of course, it goes without saying that it's important to balance your team in terms of gender, diverse skills, local knowledge, and languages. And to make sure to hire interpreters when it's necessary and to adhere to the code of conduct. And then the last step is one that is, it seems irrelevant, but it's actually one of the most important ones, as often it's forgotten, to have a checklist in time that you make sure that stuff like permissions are obtained on time, that you have the right equipment in the field, that your logistics for reaching the field, for having interview locations are all set, and that you reach out to relevant contacts in the field on time as well. So that's it in a nutshell. And then we can move on. I think it's back to, oh, yes. Yeah, the capacity development. So we offer at WWAP, we offer the capacity development exactly because now we discussed all this very much in a nutshell. But this capacity development allows us to practice and to explain this in more detail through, well, actually, through different exercises, through case studies that we do with the participants and so on. So you can see here a little overview of the capacity development that we have already done on water and gender and our toolkit in particular. After we work bienniums in different geographic regions. So here's an overview. And we offer this both online as in presence. And it's often accompanied by long-term mentoring to ensure the follow-up and the sustainability of this capacity development. Yes.
Wow. Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you.
So now we will share some very practical experiences from partners that they have implemented and used the toolkit in the field for their own purposes, which today we will share 3 cases, one in Asia, in the Philippines, one in Italy, and the other in Latin America and the Caribbean. So I will introduce the speakers who accompanies us today. Ms. Claudine Orozio Isorena. She has sent us a video because she's in the Philippines and because of time zone, it was not easy to participate. She's currently serving her 10th year as a regulator and deputy administrator for administration and legal affairs of the Metropolitan Water Works and Sewage System Regulatory Office of Manila in the Philippines. So she's for a long time has been committed to gender and development. She has chaired the Gender and Development Focal Point System within her organization since 2017. She has advanced the use of sex disaggregated data within the agency and led the 2023 Sex Disaggregated Data Water Project, the first of its kind in the Philippines, addressing critical gaps for gender-inclusive water policies. In March of last year, 2025, she received the Women in Water Leadership Award of the World Water Day PH Awards, recognizing her impactful leadership and promoting gender equality in the water sector. And then we will have here with us today Dr. Francesca Greco, who is an expert in international hydropolitics. She's visiting research fellow at King's College London and trustee of the Tony Allen Society. She has recently concluded a Marie Curie Fellowship at the University of Bergamo, where she carried out the Just Water research project on Italian water policies and water footprint. She holds a PhD in water and food policy and currently serves as senior expert associate of the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association. Her research focuses on water governance, gender mainstreaming, water diplomacy, hydrosocial territories of export-led irrigation, transboundary groundwater governance, and hydropolitics of virtual water trade. And we are especially happy to have her today because Francesca was working at WWAP when the indicators started to be developed, even sharing and bringing this idea to WWAP. So we are, it's a pleasure to have you, Francesca, today. So I will go ahead and share the video that Claudine has shared with all of us today and to, of course, share with all of you.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share the experience of the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System Regulatory Office, or the MWSSRO, in using the UNESCO WWAP Toolkit for sex disaggregated water data. First, let me introduce to you who the MWSSRO is. Our office was established in 1997 following the privatization of the water and wastewater services in Metro Manila and its nearby environs. Our primary role is to regulate the performance of the two water concessionaires, Manila Water, which serves the East Zone, and Maynilad, which serves the West Zone. Together, they now serve more than 19 million people. In 2023, the MWSSRO implemented the SEX Disaggregated Water Data Project with a total contract price of 4.8 million pesos. This project was done in partnership with our servicing agency, the University of the Philippines Center for Women and Gender Studies. Established in 1988, it is mandated to address the concerns and issues of women, gender, and sexuality in the university and in the society in support of the Magna Carta of Women, the Philippines localization of the CEDAW. The project adopted a quantitative approach using a survey on sex disaggregated water use and qualitative methodology using semi-structured interviews on water governance based on the UNESCO WWAP Toolkit to offer a nuanced understanding of sex disaggregated water data and water governance. The survey provided baseline data on WASH to quantify disparities between and among gender groups in the households. Simultaneously, qualitative methodology tools such as the key informant interviews delved into the contextual and experiential aspects of gender-responsive water governance in the MWSSRO. A total of 2,452 respondents, which was above the target of 2,300 from the two concessionaires, were interviewed in person for the project. Random sampling was used to identify the 41 barangays or villages in the concession areas, particularly in Cavite, Metro Manila, and Rizal. The sample size has a 2% margin of error and a 95% confidence level. The survey design and questionnaire utilized Tool 4, Section 2 of Guidelines on the Collection of Sex Disaggregated Water Data prepared by the UNESCO WWAP. The primary survey tool was a pen and paper questionnaire complemented by an online survey tool, the Kobo Toolbox. Most importantly, the survey involved interviewing both a female and a male respondent from each household. Using the UNESCO WWAP Toolkit helped the project team structure the survey questionnaire and align the data collection process with internationally recognized gender indicators. We also have to share that this project also included additional areas of inquiry that are often overlooked in water sector data. These included questions related to menstruation and access to water and sanitation, recognizing the role of WASH in menstrual hygiene management. Key informant interviews were also conducted to collect information on the status of gender and development mainstreaming in the MWSSRO. The interview questions were based on the UNESCO WWAP Toolkit 4, Section 1 on Gender Responsive Water Governance. Truly, the project presented a valuable opportunity to examine not just how water services respond to the distinct needs and situations of women and men, but also to reflect on how the MWSSRO is achieving its GAD mission and how it can further enhance current GAD policies and projects. Now let's go to the challenges faced in this project. Any survey relies on the honest participation of its respondents. This survey design sought to gain the cooperation and trust of both the officials in the designated villages and the household respondents. The team visited the barangays before the survey to inform the officials about the activity. Majority of the barangays sent a representative to accompany our team of enumerators, which facilitated the respondents' participation. Our team was composed of 35 enumerators and 6 supervisors. Of course, they still faced some challenges in conducting the interviews across several villages in the city of Manila, where reluctance among the respondents was prevalent. Notably, 358 respondents, or almost 15%, declined to participate, leading our enumerators to identify substitute households following the sampling guidelines. The primary reason for non-participation was the respondents' busy schedules. On average, the survey took around 15 to 20 minutes, extending to 20 minutes for those initially hesitant to participate. Also, despite wearing name tags and providing explanation for the visit, our enumerators encountered respondents who were hesitant to share personal information, expressing concerns about potential scams. In addition, since the survey coincided with the campaign period of the youth and village elections in the Philippines, some of the households were reluctant to participate, initially perceiving the activity as potentially partisan. Some of our team members reported that a longer study period would have been beneficial in preparing for as well as conducting the survey. Likewise, the key informant interviews could have probed for more information and insights if these were longer than the 1 hour allocated. In conclusion, the MWSSRO experience demonstrates that sex disaggregated water data is essential for more inclusive and evidence-based water governance. The UNESCO WWAP Toolkit provided a practical framework that institutions can use to systematically integrate gender considerations into water data collection and analysis. We are happy to share that similar initiatives are being implemented in other parts of the Philippines. For example, in Mindanao, there was an initiative led by the Bukidnon Water District in collaboration with the Bukidnon State University with the support of the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands. They also utilized the UNESCO WWAP Toolkit. A similar initiative is also underway in the Visayas. All these efforts demonstrate a growing recognition that improved water data, including gender-responsive data, is essential for sustainable water management across the country. To end, we invite all of you to view our report by scanning the QR code flashed on your screens. Thank you and mabuhay!
Well, we thank you to Claudine, and well, they inform us that if you have questions to this project, to this implementation, please send us to us, and we will make sure that this reach them and they can answer to you any curiosities that you may have. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Francesca. Francesca, you can share your screen.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, very good.
Okay. Is the screen moving? Just a trial?
Yes, everything
Is
works
my
well.
presentation moving? Okay. Thank you very much, first of all, to the WWAP former colleagues and friends. It's really a pleasure to see how I was a humble gender and water officer planting one seed, and to see how many trees are actually growing, and you are building a forest. So first of all, let's congratulate WAP and the work of the gender section for what they are doing and how many regions they are actually covering with the indicators. What I'll do, I'll start my chronometer and be on my 6 minutes time to quickly show you the Italian application of the disaggregated indicators for Italy. This work was possible for thanks to the funding of a EU research project called Just Water. So you will see the logo of the Marie Slodowska-Curie Action and the University of Bergamo. So basically what I did during the research time, I tried to implement the desk-based literature review and protocol, interview protocol for the development of the disaggregated inquiry for Italy. So initially, when we envisaged the WAP indicators, we had no idea that these indicators could have been actually used in an OECD country. Normally, we thought that the indicators were more useful in places and territories where women are more subject to the detrimental role of bringing water to villages and walking far distances for reaching the water source, and so far and so on through the community level to the higher decision level. But these indicators were actually useful for Italy as well. And my point is to show you how actually these indicators can be developed in any country, not only developing country or, for example, other countries which are under massive economic growth, but for example, the BRICS. These indicators are good for OECD countries, European countries too. So the first goal is to produce the first paper on gender and water complete as a full case studies, aligned with the similar studies from UNESCO WAP. But my inspiration was Dr. Imburgia paper on Argentina, where she actually delved into education system and how curriculum and career of women in the water sector were developed. So the phase one ended in 2025 when I did the investigation of the role of women in water science, but then I also added agriculture and water policy. And the point that was made by our former colleague Lawrence Tui, that the choice of the region influences the main field of study, it's a good point, because I initially thought that the choice of Italy was, okay, I will only do women in the water sector, but then I found other sectors and other group of indicators which were actually good for the Italian case. So what I did, I made the University of Bergamo join the coalition. I used the funding of the Marie Curie Just Water project to develop the methodology, the indicators, protocol, and to do the literature review. But then I have to still launch the phase two, the online survey, and the example of Philippines is massive. I mean, they have really covered a huge sample of population. So Regarding the survey, my first aim was to cover 1,000 participants to the online survey. And then I will need to raise additional research funds for the field work because I need to do interviews and maybe I need a team and not just one person in order to enlarge the topic of the initial research to migrants in the sector of agri-food work and also the access to wash services, so human right to water in Italy, because this is also an additional topic that came later after the first formulation. So very quickly, the literature review was performed, and I have numbers of the legislative framework in Italy, the theoretical aspects were also explored. All the publications regarding water and gender in Italy were scanned, and obviously we had basically no publication, very few publication. The Italian literature is basically non-existent regarding the topic, apart from some few papers regarding the impact of floods on women. But the most interesting part was that I found in the agricultural field the same issues that African women have or Latin American women have. And for example, we have put in the indicators of the initial and still the second version access to irrigation extension services in agriculture, or unpaid labor for agriculture, or the non-possibility to own land. The Italian women have already declared exactly the same problem. So I want to close it here. Just my final message for this training will be the indicators are useful in Italy as well as in other countries. I have developed, and I'll show you here, the methodological tools in the Italian context. And I want to thank you for your attention, and I would like WWAP to be a partner in the development of the next phase. Thank you very much. My time is up.
Thank you, Francesca. Now, I think these two cases, these two examples, has been also an excellent demonstration of very different contexts. One in the Philippines, that for your background, the Philippines has a law that 5% of the public funding, public budget goes to gender equality. So they have resources also to implement these kind of things. In the case of Francesca, we see that this is personal effort, personal interest, academic research activities within her career path, but also in the institutions where she has been working. So this is also determine the scale, the reach that you can have and the level of personal effort. So thank you very much, Francesca. And
thank you to you.
Well, we will have some minutes for questions, and it will be a good opportunity that the people connected today can also reach to you and get more information. I will go back again to share my screen, because we would also like to share just to finalize this segment of today's meeting. We would like to share other examples of application, implementation, and development of projects that includes this tool, the toolkit. In this case, we had the support of Spain through the Ministry of Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge, MITECO. And I think we have someone from MITECO present today, what I'm happy to see. And through the Spanish Cooperation for Development, AECID. And this project, and I will very briefly share some of the things that we did, had the purpose of supporting capacity development in the use of this toolkit. So the project was not as large as in the Philippines, for example, but we address a specific aspect of the linkages between water, gender, and climate. And given the context of Latin American countries, and specifically where I will show some examples of a training that we did in for South American countries, the aspect of wide gap between socioeconomic gaps, also how the gender inequalities are seen in governance. Although the situation of women, for example, fetching water is not as evident as in other contexts in other regions, still there are issues related to that, to the time spent on these domestic aspects of water. So we had a training activity of a week, almost a week. One of our colleagues that participated with me in Montevideo is also connected here, Patricia. And we invited representatives of different water agencies of different South American countries. We had done before a similar activity in Central America. And the participants of this very intense 5 days of work developed along the days a very practical approach to implement the toolkit. They had brought an idea, they selected a problem or a situation where they wanted to apply the indicators, and they started this work already during this in-person training. And a collection of these cases was published in a publication that at the end I will share the QR code. Some of the authors I have seen also connected today. And for example, in Argentina, what the participants of this training wanted to find out was the participation of women in decision-making in integrated water resource management. And they did this at a river basin level, and they took data series that were already available in the country, and they implemented, for example, one of the indicators on governance, the male and female participation in water governance structures. So as you can see, in this case, green is for women and pink is for men. So the majority of the presence, the leadership in these river basin entities are still male dominated, except in some situations, and they also included information on leadership in the meteorological service at national level. So also, as in other regions of the world, still this gap in the participation of women in governance, in leadership of water institutions is quite low. So the recommendations that this study provides is, well, the need to institutionalize the collection of sex disaggregated data and to see which are the opportunities, although sometimes and in some countries this has political changes and more challenges to work on water and gender maybe than before. So there are entry points where the work on water and gender and the collection of sex disaggregated data can continue to be done. And this group, and I cite COIFE, that is the institution that has implemented this study, has proved of it, and they are working at national level and including all the different provinces of the country on this. The other case that I wanted to share was from Costa Rica, that this group did something very interesting. So at national level, they used an indicator for number of female and male employees working in water utilities. And they organized the different variables that the government and different agencies, like 15 different agencies related to water, which are the variables that they are currently collecting data. And they divided these in 3 categories. One, those that could be sex disaggregated by immediately. They could do it, but they were not doing it. These were category A. Then other variables that can be disaggregated, and with more resources or capacities they could do. And this was quite a large percentage, more than 40%. And then there were other variables that by nature couldn't be disaggregated by sex. So with this study, they could identify that only 12% of the variables that they were being disaggregated, but even those were not being used for decision making. And there were a large number of variables and data that they were currently collecting that only, for example, including in the forms that they used, a sex disaggregation of the variable could help to have this information with a minimum investment in resources or work. And the final case that I wanted to share is a very different type of studies from Uruguay, that they adapted indicators of the toolkit for schools, for taking information regarding water, sanitation and hygiene at schools, primary schools of remote rural areas of Uruguay. And then the perceptions of, instead of household members, as the toolkit says, of teachers regarding WASH decision-making and WASH aspects on water access and water quality at schools levels. So some of the key findings were, the majority of the teachers in Uruguay are women, so they are the main responsible for managing water at schools, something that is not necessarily a given thing. And also a very interesting aspect that they could identify is that the perception of the sanitation facilities at school were different between women and men educators. So the needs of separate bathrooms or the need of having water. So this is something that I think it gave a quite interesting feedback for us, because in a sector that is very different as what we usually work when working in water for agriculture or WASH at the households, we could see that the toolkit could be also applied. So with this, I will stop here and we'll stop sharing. Okay. And now I would really like to open the floor to spend a few minutes receiving any questions or any comments from the public, the people connected. Some of the people are, as said, friends, colleagues that have been working on this have been also using the toolkit, and I thank you for being connected. If some want to also speak in Spanish, I think it won't be an issue because many people understand Spanish and we can translate as well. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. Sí. María Eugenia o Paula. I saw one of you raise your hand.
Hola, buen día a todos. María Eugenia, pero me
Hola.
aparece Paula. Ok. Bueno,
Hola, María.
felicidades por la presentación. Gracias, Laura, por presentar también el estudio de caso que se llevó adelante a través del COIFE. Quería felicitar a Francesca también por su presentación, que estuvo estupendo. Y aprovechar para saludar también a Loren y a todo el equipo de UNESCO WAP con el que COIFE viene trabajando tanto y tan fuertemente.
I will translate. So, Maria Eugenia from Argentina wants to thank us for the presentation also of the studies that they conducted in Argentina through COIFE, the Hydrological Council of that includes all the provinces in Argentina. And well, she also takes the opportunity to greet Francesca and Lawrence. ¿Quieres preguntar o comentar algo más? María Eugenia. Ok. Good.
Sí, realmente no, agradecer la fortaleza que
Ok.
da y el respaldo que transmite UNESCO en esto de integrar las políticas de género en el sector hídrico y la visibilidad que permite, ¿no? a tantos países de todo el mundo, porque nos vamos integrando a través de la coalición.
Thank you. So she wanted also to mention the importance of supporting this type of information to be also informing policies and to be supporting gender inclusion, gender integration, also at national levels through the multi-stakeholder coalition that, for the ones that maybe are not familiar with it, is an initiative that UNESCO WAP is coordinating and started in 2021 with a call for action for advancing gender equality in water. And right now we have more than 200 individual members from different institutions, representatives of member states, academia, NGOs, and different water agencies that take part. And the idea with this coalition is that we can support each other and share information. We many times meet in events and try to organize sessions together, so to create this critical mass for going all in the same goal and same direction. So I see that, so we have colleagues from UNEP connected. Oh, INSA.
Yes, thank you also from my side for this very insightful presentation. I think there were many elements that I noted down that are very interesting. I'm working as a project officer for Plan Bleu, so we work under the UNEP system, so the Barcelona Convention, and I'm mostly focusing on climate change adaptation in coastal areas, but also water management. Because I mean, you can't really talk about climate change adaptation in the Mediterranean without talking about water. And in the past, we also co-developed gender-sensitive climate risk assessment. And this is why I found like all the parts about the gender-sensitive indicators very interesting. And I will definitely have a look into this after this meeting again to see if there are like more connections, that we could integrate as well. And I just have one question regarding the sampling, because you said that it would be great to have like very, like representative sampling and things like this. And my question is like, how do you identify, for example, local women that are really working on the ground on like different water topics and things like this, because I think it's sometimes very challenging to link this regional perspective then to national, and then also to like local women on the ground that are working in the water sector. And yes, if you have like more information on this topic, this would be great.
Thank you very much. Francesca, would you like to share some experience? Then we can also share.
Sure. Thank you very much for this question. Obviously, as you see, also the cases of the Philippines, the cases of Argentina, the other cases have shown different samples types. Okay, so for example, when they spoke about women in governance structure, they were surveying all the women in the different governmental and non-governmental entities dealing with water, but also, for example, I was very surprised, the meteorological service, no? So this is definitely a national sample. But obviously, when you are going to the local community, you have to do a stakeholder mapping. So before even creating the sample, you need to understand what is your stakeholder mapping in the region you are going to apply your survey. And the most difficult part is asking the same question to women and men according to the cultural setting of the region, because sometimes women are very difficult to be approached. Sometimes even men are difficult to be approached separately, because in some cultural settings it's difficult to actually divide the two groups, or the opposite way around. Sometimes it's very easy to only talk to women because they are already in group, but then it's difficult to approach men. So for the national level, for example, I give you my example for Italy. When I will investigate the CV and the the CV building, the curriculum development of women in the water sector, I will not start from university, I will start from high school. Because, for example, already in the high school, we have a high school called Agrario, which is focusing on agrarian agricultural studies, where women are totally absent. So, for example, my case with the education sampling, I will start with high school, university level, and then postgraduate level, and then I will go to the institutional level. And also I will replicate the example of Argentina, because I will do the river basin organization. But being Italian, I have to do an institutional. For example, Argentina took from 2013 to 2023 time span, okay? I will have to re-sample this because the river basin organization in Italy have been established 4 years ago, okay? Before we had the ATO, which was another institution. So even the funding of the employees will be extremely difficult because the names of institutions have changed. I'll stop it here.
Thank you very much, and also for sharing some of the experience that we have had. We implemented field surveys, for example, in the Pacific, small island developing states, or in Belize, in Jamaica. I also, before WWAP, worked for several years doing this kind of studies in Ethiopia, for example. And something that has been always useful is, well, first we need to approach leaders of the communities, so at the very local level, because they will first open the doors of the community and allows you granting permission, but also they are, of course, very good sources of information and will direct you to key persons, and those key persons will be suggesting which other person you should interview. Sometimes, so the downside of this is that maybe they will direct you to very specific persons that maybe will not tell all the things that you want. So what I have done in those cases is, apart from interviewing this, is to, for example, go to schools, just visit and talk to teachers, or to find in the communities a shop and start talking to people, or if you see farmers, and in a way building this sample according to the needs that you have. It's very useful to create trust relationships first. So if you can spend some extra days at the beginning just to hang around and so people know what you are doing, and especially being always very transparent with the objectives of your study. So if people know what you are doing, which are the purposes, what you will do with information, after all, they probably will open doors and share the information with you, and also point those women who will be interesting to interview. Thank you for the question. Any other question or comment before we round up and close? Okay, seems no. Good. So just I will go back to share the screen to provide a bit of a summary. So are you seeing again my screen? Okay. So just to conclude, very key points that we wanted to share. So today, especially this year, that we are having this opportunity to be discussing water and gender at the UN level, we published the World Water Development Report on these topics, and we see that regardless of the region, there are still gaps, differences, and inequalities in regards to water that affect women disproportionately. We have been talking about this for 20, 25 years or more, but still we keep saying the same because the gaps are still important, and in some places they're widening, unfortunately. So this is something that we need to continue talking about, working, integrating, and measuring. If we continue measuring with sex disaggregated data, we will support with stronger evidence what we already know. But we have seen this year with the report that when we put numbers, we can also convince people who are not already convinced in gender, and they are not working in gender issues, but in hydrology or in the water sectors at wider levels, that this is something that needs to be addressed urgently. So we cannot continue waiting. We cannot continue waiting until having more resources, for example. Apologies. So we have also seen that the WWAP Toolkit provides with a global standard for gender responsive water assessments, and all these methodologies are really open to everybody to be used. They are it's an open source. You can download the toolkit from the UNESCO repository or from UNESCO WWAP website. They are translated in English, in Spanish, in Russian. We are completing the Arabic, and they are translated also in French. So it's possible to use the resource in many different contexts. We also learned that having training and accompanying the process while you are implementing the indicators is quite critical. It's very important, and Lawrence was talking about that before. And finally, we have also mentioned the multi-level and multi-stakeholder cooperation enhance all these efforts. So it's a very important thing that we are here together, that each of us know that there are other people that has the same objectives or goals in their work, or that don't want to be working in the water sectors just in a silo, but integrating these different aspects, this different knowledge of how things can be different for women, for men, and also for other groups, for different groups, because the toolkit has also that flexibility that you can also disaggregate in other variables like age or locality or socioeconomic status, etc. So the last thing to say is that we thank you very much for having joined us today, for the interest. We remain available for sharing these resources, our experiences, publications, also the publication of the Latin America case study. I think I didn't show the QR code, but you can find it in the UNESCO repository, also on our website. And thank you to my colleagues for the work, for the support, for putting this together today, and to Francesca and
Thank you to
Claudine
you.
that has presented. And with this, I think we have reached the end. If there is any final comment or question before we close.
There is a question, Laura.
Yeah,
It's in the chat.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I haven't seen
I
it.
can read it loud. In what cycle phases of the project that we need to use this toolkit and indicator for? So which phase of the project?
Okay, thank you. So just quickly, we recommend at the design phase, very beginning, to learn which is the baseline situation to make a project that really fits the needs and the resources available. I think this is something very important. And then it will depend on the project. For example, we work with several GF projects, the Global Environmental Facility, and they have a very specific process with different stages. So for example, when you developed all the proposal for the project, they require gender analysis. At that point, the toolkit is very useful. And this reminds me to share that I think in 1 month or month and a half, we will have a training specifically on a guidance that we have developed on how to integrate gender into GEF transboundary water projects. And we will be inviting you as well. And the toolkit also can be used when you have data sets and to do analysis, but also to collect primary information. So this can also help for monitoring and evaluation of a project. And when the project closes, of course, for evaluation ex and post project implementation. I hope it answered.
Yes, thank you very much for these valuable responses. I am from Conservation International Timor-Leste, and I work for the GF project in Timor-Leste and for the watershed management between Indonesia and Timor-Leste. So I work as a safeguard coordinator for this project, and there is a gender mainstreaming section that I'm working for. So that's the way I'm asking this question, because we are now in the transboundary diagnosis analysis process. Yeah. So, but yeah, we are now in TDA process. So I participate in this, and I think this is really help for me to move forward in this project, and especially because the gender requirement is very big in the Jeff project. Yeah. Thank you very much for the presentation and responses. Yeah.
I just included the link in the chat to the guide that was developed by WWAP and IW Learn. And so as Laura said, it has this focus on Jeff IW Learn projects, and it also covers specifically TDA SAP projects. So feel free to look at it, but then there will be an upcoming training like Laura mentioned.
Oh, then the TDA is the moment also to use the toolkit for the developing the gender action plan. And this is also something that we have been supported for the MED program, or INSA, I think is we're well familiar with. Okay, so just not to go beyond the time that we have allocated for today, we will close now. Thank you very much. It's been very nice to have you all here. Thank you, Patricia, Epifania, Lawrence, the team, Michele for the support. And nice to see you all. Nice to see Elisa as well, Sabrina. And well, we will remain in touch and sharing our next activities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Gracias. Chao.
Gracias. Hasta luego.
Bye bye.